Where's the intro? Where's the intro? Woo! The production teams already celebrating Cinco de Mayo. It's a mess. They're already loaded backstage. They're already hammered. It's ridiculous. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Woo! We're on air. Production team. It could be a long show. They're already partaking in the celebratory offerings of Cinco de Mayo. Everything's messed up.
I was hoping to dance to some like mariachi songs. You ever hear
that? Of all that is good, you have 40 minutes to find us a damn mariachi song. You never know though. At least you're from Central America, so you can do it. Might get yelled.
I'm from South America. That's a little different.
South America. Got it. See, like right there. See, if you just offer it and you don't get it right, so you offend a third of the people, no matter what we do. So, hey, how's everybody doing? Happy Cinco de Mayo. Happy Wednesday. Thank you for joining the show. We greatly appreciate it. Stevie B is down for the count. Got his second COVID shot yesterday. Down this morning. Sent the email. I'm down for the count. So all we have is Dre.
All we have? You mean so now we have just
Dre and I holding it down.
Yes. Hi. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Oh, he's still.
That's old school. Yeah, that's old Steven. That's
but maybe because that's his favorite holiday. So we got to keep it like that.
Is he going to be a leprechaun forever then? Is that what we're doing? Steven's always a leprechaun. But look, now Dre, look, now's your time because look, when you're away, he always says something about like Dre is this and Dre is that. So look, let's just throw Steven under the bus.
He says nice stuff about me only.
I know. No, now he's no longer a host. We're interviewing new hosts. He's out of here. Snooze, you lose. People want his job. We're looking for a new dean for GSU. See, with Steven, see, he's gone.
And it's a high-paying salary. 10 out of 10 recommend.
And we get $1 a week. You get $1 a week for being on the show, and you can go spend that at the dollar store to get some nice.
That wouldn't even get me anything at the dollar store plus tax.
All right. Well, every other show you get to have a graphic. No, 4 shows a month. It's $4, and then you get 2 things. See, I went this morning. I was trying to look for sombrero and all, but I couldn't do it. And then I'm just doing. So listen. We are actually going to talk about the government 2 shows in a row. So last week was about the government. This week is about the government. So shocking for our audience. As you all know, we try to stay away or try to keep some levity and add some fun to the government process. But today we're actually going to talk about the government, selling to the government as well. We have Brian here from Open Tech. So we'll talk about what they're doing and working with the federal government or working with the government in the public sector. So we'll be here in just a little bit. And so, but as we're talking about Cinco de Mayo, as we try to tie in fun things, Dre was running some stats. So Dre, hit him with the stats with the government spending.
Yeah. So in the last year, the government has spent $2.3 million on guac. Surprising because you think that they would spend more. But you know what? Maybe they just write guac instead of guacamole. Who knows? I love guac on everything. Sombreros, whopping 4.5 mil. Wow.
Yeah.
And then tequila, 4.3 mil.
That's less than sombreros. I find that hard to believe. There's less spending.
Well, you want to know why? Because sometimes the purchase orders, and I was getting into this, but not to get into the weeds. Sometimes it says Patron, sometimes it says Milagro. Like I have Milagro.
Whoa! See, even this show is going to end poorly. Off to a rough start.
I asked you ahead of time. You said I could have it.
Go, Dre. You go. Who am I to hold you back from big things you're doing? So
if you're watching, it's not really tequila. There's maybe water in there.
Liars. Hey, so bring those back. What were the stats again? So listen, as we always talk about, the government buys everything. Look, and the production crew missed a dollar sign there on tequila as well. So the production crew is off the rails today. But the government buys everything, normally millions and millions and millions of dollars of whatever you sell. So encourage you, again, as we always say, the largest prospect in the world, they buy everything and they always pay. So God willing, go out and sell to the government. So that's what we want to focus on today. Hi, Eric Swedler. How are you doing out there? Also recovering from the COVID virus. So welcome back to the land of the living. Anything else before we bring Brian? Anything else you want to? Do we miss anything, class? Anything else going on? Big plans tonight? You got something going down?
I can't say it on here because I don't know who's watching. It's a surprise.
Cinco de Mayo surprise was good. As I sent to our staff, just a reason for most people in America to drink midweek. But
I'll be eating tacos and drinking tequila, so that's all.
Right, it's a good thing the show's not tomorrow because Dre will have her PT, Steven today, and Dre's tomorrow. So, listen, let's bring it back to something that might be helpful for people's career. I want to bring in Brian Chidester. Am I saying that right? I don't know. He'll correct me. Look, from Open Tech. Sorry, Brian. I know it's bad. Look, he's the head of Worldwide.
Yeah, you got it right. You got the last name right. Good job.
There you go. Look, see?
You probably practiced it like 13 times.
I know. Look, it's a work in progress. Listen, he is the head of worldwide industry strategy for the public sector for Open Text. So we're going to talk about doing big government things. Hey, Brian, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You're talking off the rails. One thing you missed there, Jack. This should have been a happy hour show, man.
I know.
It should have been 5:30, and just this one time.
Bro.
GovCast at 5:30.
Bro, do you see what's already happening? Like, do you see what's happening? Like, we're off the rails and it's noon. Can you imagine we did this show at friggin' 5? Well, it would be a mess. Hey, we missed one other thing. Listen, it's Teacher Appreciation Week, right? So we want to acknowledge all the teachers out there. It's been a super challenging year. Amazing. What you do is amazing. The fact you've adopted, to having teaching remotely and learning all the technology, amazing. So shout out to all.
I have to. I was telling you, Jack. My wife's a teacher right now. She's a STEAM teacher in Prince William County, and seeing her and her friends and kind of what they're doing, it's been incredible. So hats off to the teachers out there. You guys have done yeoman's work.
I cannot imagine. It's crazy to think about. Oh, yeah, your job's hard enough. Now we'll do it remotely, trying to do tests and I cannot imagine. So God bless. There's not enough things we could say nice about the teachers. So thank you. If you know or associate with a teacher, give them a hug. Tell them we love them. Appreciate all they do. Amazing. So, Brian, tell our audience about your background and Open Text.
Yeah, so I'm head of worldwide industry strategy at Open Text, as you mentioned. And what I love about my job is it's really just to make our customers successful. I work with a lot of governments around the world, and it's really to help them understand some of the patterns and trends that are out there and make sure that they are kind of aligning to best practices that they go through their digital transformation evolution. So there's a number of ways that I do that. At Open Text, I'm really lucky because we have such a broad portfolio of products, and this isn't a commercial for Open Text, but honestly, it's a commercial for how cool my job is. I get to work in the smart city IoT space. I get to work in the low code application development space, the security space. We have a best of breed security portfolio, enterprise content management. And to top it all off, one of the best digital experience platforms that's in the market. So I get to take all of that and bring it to bear for our customers. It's really cool. It's a lot of fun.
So can you deep dive into Open Text? Like, if you're going to do your minute commercial, tell folks like what Open Text does, how it started, and how you help agencies.
Yeah, so Open Text started, I think we're having our 30th anniversary this year. If my PR team's listening, if I messed that up, I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure it's our 30th anniversary, but we really evolved from being a records management, enterprise content management company into kind of a broad digital transformation platform that governments can leverage really for almost anything that they do. So it's a company that we come in, we're able to kind of help them crawl, walk, run into their digital evolution. So that's the shortest way I can say it. There's a lot more there, right? But it's an exciting time to be at Open Text because the acceleration of digital transformation, especially with COVID, has honestly, it's made me really busy, but at the same time, it's been an exciting busy. So I'm sure Jack and Andy, you guys have been too. So it's been a lot of fun.
I love, so our audience, as they think about, new to the government space, trying to sell the government, can you share your experience in that? Because it's huge, right? We see a digital transformation just like all the companies went home, the government also went home, and it created a ton of both opportunities and challenges, right, as they try to work from home and be safe and a ton of new technological challenges, right? So can you share with our audience some of the opportunities and things you've seen out there as agencies kind of struggle or try to get more updated from a technology perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, one of the things, the folks listening that are doing business with the government, one of the things you'll probably notice is there might have been organizations that you were having conference calls with a year and a half ago that you're now having either video chat or you're on some type of collaboration platform. That was kind of priority 1A as COVID evolved. But now, honestly, the easiest way I can explain opportunities is interoperability. There's so many systems out there that governments plug into. Their legacy IT infrastructures are having to plug into that, and frankly, it's just not making the cut. So that IT modernization side is obviously one. Citizen experience is another one that I think a lot of governments at federal and state and local have really kind of hardened down on. They're hyper focusing on making sure they're providing those digital services for citizens, because ultimately not everybody wanted to go in person before. And when COVID hit, they just frankly couldn't. So now they're trying to figure out, how do I create a hybrid experience where we have some in person, we have digital, but basically people can choose how they want to consume these services. So that's another piece. Integration plays a large part in that. When you're thinking about all the different systems that governments leverage to do these citizen services, it becomes imperative that you have a platform that plugs into all these systems. And 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, you're not rip and replacing again. You're trying to just future-proof what you're doing. So that's all the priority that government's kind of looking at around the citizen experience side is, hey, how do I take a strategy that we have to deploy these services and go beyond just a pretty user experience, but really have some concentrated value behind it.
Yeah, I would, for our audience, I would just tell you, listen, this is something that's going to be happening for the next 12 to 24 months. The opportunity in the government space for just what you think maybe in the private industry is very basic. The government's trying to get up to speed. And with a lot of the incentive stimulus money that's come out now, there's a lot of funding in the system now, particularly in the education school world. A lot of the stimulus packages has a ton of money. I think $280 billion in the 3 stimulus packages for schools, infrastructure, computers, as they try to help students and schools get to the next level. But if you're in any one of those, enormous opportunity in the government space now is in the world that kind of open text and what Brian focuses on. Enormous.
Yeah, another thing I would tell people, if you are in the education space, not just to think about the teacher-student facilitation, but think on the back office side too, the administration. There's so many different challenges that they're having as they're sending people home and working remotely, and they'll slowly get back into the office, but they were well behind even governments when it came to some of their digital infrastructure. So beyond just those Zoom meetings and things, there's so much more opportunity in that back office administration side of things, and teacher-parent facilitation of processes. So intelligent forms and that type of experience, all of that is certainly in play.
So I'm curious. So you said you work with government agencies, right, all around the world. Mm-hmm. So I'm just curious because we primarily will work with agencies within the U.S. So what has your experience been like working with government in other countries, would you say, versus the U.S.?
No, really good question. I actually get that all the time. I mean, part of like I mentioned before, my job is to find patterns across the globe that we can kind of align governments to. And what we see the most is that governments have similar challenges. Some of the differences are the blocking and tackling of getting things done, right? So in the U.S., you have FedRAMP from a compliance side, CMMC, which I think your listeners probably understand both of those. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's other compliance components that you have to kind of go through to be able to do business with those governments. But once you get beyond that, really the challenges are very similar. And it's figuring out how to scale value. And that's been the biggest driver for what we've seen from a success point of view.
Interesting.
Can you talk about, I know in addition to OpenText, you also have a podcast, right, focused on kind of the government space. Mm-hmm. I think it's called the Government Huddle, right? I think it's called. So can you share with the audience what the Government Huddle and the focus of that and kind of how it came to be as well?
Yeah, happy to. So the Government Huddle, I work with an organization called Government Marketing University. And for any of you guys that are marketers out there, I definitely recommend checking it out. It's gmarku.com. And CEO and founder Luann Brossman, who's been in the space for a long time, asked me.
Yeah, we had her on the show. She's been on the show.
I was going to say, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you're listening, Luann, hi. So she had asked me to do some content, and this is kind of how it manifested itself in the Government Huddle. And really the idea behind it is I really see the marketing function evolving beyond just what the traditional marketing role was, which, as you guys know, you work with a lot of these folks. It's create an email, create a web page, blast things out, rinse and repeat, do that forward. And to me, that doesn't really drive a lot of value. And the more you can understand the market, understand your personas, get into their heads and their challenges, I think you can start to become more of an expert on how to reach these people from a messaging point of view. And that's kind of what I like to do on my podcast, is bring some of the people in that we are targeting and have conversations with them. I've had Suzette Kennon, who's the former federal CIO, Paul Puckett, who leads cloud strategy for the U.S. Army. I just had a conversation, hasn't even gone live yet. It's going to go live next week with Dr. Linda Davis, who ran, she was the Chief Digital Experience Officer for the Department of Veterans Affairs. And just to have these conversations and figure out what's keeping them up at night. How can we best partner and serve you? And it's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot. It's been over a year, but these conversations have been hopefully as helpful to other people as they have for me.
So can you talk about what you've seen in that world from what were the messaging to the government that worked prior to COVID, now in COVID, and then maybe what you see as you talk to those folks, what does it look like? Because I think a lot of the folks that watch this are like, I'm not sure what to say, how to say it. Like, how have you seen the evolution of the marketing message that works well as they're trying to target government agencies?
I think one of the biggest mistakes people make at the very forefront of a campaign, and when they're targeting the people they're trying to reach, is they come in and say, I need to reach the CIO or the CTO. And really that shouldn't be your goal. Your goal should take a step back and understand where the money is. Who's really driving this? And I'm sure you guys speak to that before, right? You guys are providing that information to the folks listening and your customers, but really understanding who those people are. And then at the same time, understanding what the mission is and what their challenges are in achieving it. One of the biggest complaints that I hear from the C-suite, the CIOs, and just the folks that are facilitating this is they get messages from people just trying to sell to them, but they really don't understand what the challenges are. They want somebody to partner with them, not somebody to sell them product or software. Mm-hmm. So how do you, and this is what I try to evangelize on the podcast, is how do you figure out how to jump into that foxhole with them and really help them achieve their mission, not just sell them something and move on to the next sale, but really partner with them and help them achieve their goals. And that's really what they're looking for. If you can reverse engineer messaging from that, you're on the right track.
I think it's amazing when folks think about the government, they think it's so different, but you're right. Like, one government client could change your business forever, because a lot of them can be long-term contracts, but it is thinking about it with a longer time horizon, right? If you're trying to measure an ROI in the next 3 months, it could be problematic. But if you get one of these, especially these larger contracts, it renews for 3 or 4 times, it literally will change your entire business, right? It's like having a longer term view of it.
Yeah, and you get these smaller companies sometimes, and no offense to people listening in the smaller companies, but they want to dabble in the government, and you can't dabble. You can't put your toe in and see how it happens. You're either all in or you're not. Yeah. And the folks that are buying, they know. So if you're going to commit to it for the long haul. Yeah. An average deal is 12 to 18 month cycles when you look at that. And it's not just a sales transaction. You have to look from a BD and a capture perspective. There's a lot that goes into it. Yeah. And because of that, you really need to invest in the market. And I'll say this, it's a market worth investing in, especially right now. It's one of the I think the highest growth markets happening right now, especially because of COVID. Yep. So yeah, there you go. I mean, you guys saw they bought tequila and guacamole and sombreros. So they literally buy everything. Yeah. So I think there's opportunity for everybody that wants to invest and commit, but just don't dabble in it.
Yeah.
So on a different route, so I saw that you've been in federally focused positions before, and then it seems like in your role now at OpenText, are you guys targeting all levels then, Fed, state, and local?
All levels, yep. And honestly, the coming out of COVID, I think the state and local governments are the ones that probably need the most support and the most help. They've been without some of those revenues that they traditionally get for over a year now at tax revenues and all that type of stuff. So I think it's important that one, that's the perfect opportunity to really partner and help them through this. But two, there's so much need for evolution at that level. I mean, you had people that were handing out laptops because they didn't have laptops. They were using desktop computers at their job just to facilitate remote work. So when they're that far behind in one area, you need to be, and I'm not saying all local governments, but they really need to evolve. And one of the things that I spoke about as COVID hit was the idea around digital equity. And if you're in a city like New York versus a smaller city in the middle of the country, the type of resources that you're going to bring to bear for your citizens, it looks very different, right? And the budgets are different. I mean, you look at New York and it's the size of, maybe a country over in certain regions. So they have a large budget, a lot of value that they can bring to their citizens, and there's still value that can be brought in the middle, more rural areas. But it's important that they invest in the right type of technologies to do that, because it's not all about just throwing money at the problem. It's about figuring out what the problems are first and the best ways to solve them.
So tell me, because you've targeted all types of agencies, right, would you say that there should be a different approach or like different messaging for our folks watching that target SLED, let's say, versus federal?
I don't know if there's different messaging. I think some of the challenges are a little bit different. On the state and local levels, especially the local levels, citizen service deployment is really going to be one of their top priorities. Whereas at the federal government, they might be focusing on the facilitation of policy and legislation management, things of that nature. So it's some of the challenges shift, and the way they deploy those services, they're kind of tip of the spear from that regard. So they might be looking at different type of technologies like omni-channel communication and those type of things. But the messaging really is all the same. Yeah.
Yeah, for our audience, I would just say the message we've always talked about with GSU and at GovSpend, it's like, especially for the next 12 to 18 months with the government, is, hey, how do you do more with less? Right. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking at a message, you're trying to get to an agency, it's like they're all somewhat budget constrained. You know, as Brian mentioned, like the tax revenues, travel, all the things that, have generated money for municipalities are short. But they start to really provide a lot of the same functions. They can't go, hey, we're no longer going to protect our citizens, or police department's closed, right? So
exactly.
Yeah. So I just encourage you to think about, hey, how do you help them do more with less? That message will sell for the next year to the government, because that's what every head of procurement's confronted with. Hey, we had to do these testing stations, we had to do all these expenditures, and I'm short revenue. Hey, how do I get the same thing done with a little less money? And promise you, you will get a call back when you put out that message for especially the procurement folks on their side. Amen.
Perfect example of how understanding their challenges and really to the degree that they do is exactly the way to be heard by the folks that you want to listen. Really understanding what those barriers are to success.
Yeah, and I say for our audience, so there's a ton of resources. So when Brian has open text, right, what that company's doing, there's this podcast, the Government Huddle. I know I think you're also involved in the Global Smart City Alliance. So can you tell folks about that and what it does and your role there?
Yeah, so just as an advisor, the G20 Global Smart City Alliance was pulled together by the World Economic Forum to drive policy and best practices around the evolution of smart city propagation across the globe. So as you start to do these cities, certain in major regions, you get lessons learned, right? You get understanding kind of what's going to work on not just on a technology side, but on a data privacy side, et cetera. And we just have those conversations. And there's a lot of folks, even a lot smarter than me, that are in this group that are helping to ensure that the evolution of that is one that can be a foundation for other regions. It's a really cool group. And in the US, there were only 2 cities actually chosen to be part of this alliance as well. One of them, I had the CIO on my podcast, the CIO for the city of Chattanooga, and they have a really cool story about how that evolved. And you would think Chattanooga, that's just a small little rural city in Tennessee, but what they're doing from a citizen service deployment perspective and the back office digital transformation evolution is really impressive. And then the other city was out in San Jose. So you have one in Silicon Valley, and then you have one in kind of the heart of America. So really cool. And there were only 2 cities chosen out of 36 across the world. So really cool program, and I'm excited to see the yield that'll come from it as smart cities start to evolve.
Yeah, and I think for folks that are looking ahead for the next couple of years, those of you that are more forward thinking, a lot of what happens in the government space, there's other like organizations like the Smart City Alliance that will kind of give you, here's what's coming, right? So you don't have to guess and like, oh, you know what they're trying to put in citywide Wi-Fi. They're trying to put in new wireless infrastructure. You know, whatever the things are, if you study it, Google it, find out what a lot of these think tanks, policy initiatives are, you can see what the cities are moving to because they're all following suit, right? It's hey, what worked here? That's what's going to be coming in the next cities, and you can get ahead of the game in the government world, which is really unique.
And 5G, I mean, that infrastructure is really driving it forward, and we're even looking ahead now. 6G will be here before you know it. Yeah. It's a less than 10-year technology that I think will start to really drive smart cities, accelerate the propagation there. So really cool. And another thing I'll mention on the smart city side is if you do play in that space, one of the messages that you should be providing to that local C-level executive is this is a way for them to make money too. It's not just them spending money to put sensors out there. There's ways for it not only to save them money, but actually generate revenue. I mean, I'm in the DC area, and you look at part of that. I mean, it's not a smart city per se, but some of the tolls that we pay on fast lanes to bypass traffic, that's a way for them to get revenue. So you need to look holistically around some of these technologies, and there's ways. That's a perfect example of a way to partner with the city, not just sell them something.
Oh yeah, going back to the how do you do more with less? When your solution helps generate some revenue, amazing. Like another example is on the contracting side. We all hear about co-ops, right? These agencies create co-ops. Well, one of the reasons agencies are incentivized to do co-ops is they'll normally get a little percentage of everything that goes through that contract for their city. So thinking creatively, hey, not trying to maximize your profit all the time, but hey, how do I get a win-win where it adds a little revenue stream or some again, a way to make up for the money they're losing can be an amazing way. You're a no-brainer solution if you help generate on the revenue side. You'll be like, oh my gosh, this was so easy. So
absolutely.
I just encourage folks to think creatively because that's what all the procurement, mayor, governors are all thinking about. Hey, now COVID, how do I fill in the blank? Cool. Hey, and I know, Brian, you also worked at IHS Markit. So can you tell folks about that organization? I know they do a lot of data things. And so can you share with folks that organization? I know you worked there for a little while.
Yeah, and while you were making that statement, they might have just acquired another company. They've grown through acquisitions, but they've been a true kind of intelligence company. Yeah. I worked on the aerospace and defense side, helping organizations forecast opportunities 5 years, 10 years down the road, so they could kind of diversify some of the things they would do. And the level of granularity that the intelligence brings is impressive. On the automotive side, let's even say consumer, some of you might have even heard of IHS Markit and didn't even realize it. I think they acquired IIHS now too. So they're part of that, and Polk on the automotive side, but they do a number of different industries. I just happen to do aerospace and defense, and I worked with a lot of the larger global SIs and folks that were focused on defense industrial base, just to help, like I said, help them understand and help them forecast some of the opportunities. And it got as granular. I mean, you look at platforms, right? But then you look into the systems and all that type of stuff. So really cool stuff that I was doing there. And really, if anybody's looking for that type of intelligence, I would definitely recommend that company.
Yeah, IHS Markit, a lot of detailed technical data. If you're trying to deep dive into vertical market about where the opportunities are and where the volume and who's spending what and what companies are dominant. They have a great database. Yeah, and national security stuff too. I mean, they did geospatial analysis to provide that as a service to certain countries, and so the whole lot that they do for sure.
I have a question more so on your background. So I was looking at your LinkedIn before, right? You've got a ton of public sector work, but what got you into this, right? I mean, you didn't wake up one day and said, I want to work with the government. That's going to be my passion. So I guess kind of how did that evolve?
So, I mean, I grew up in the DC area, and not that I wasn't born here, but I've lived here since I was just a little kid. And I feel like if you grow up in the DC area, you either evolve into a government employee or someone who does business with the government.
Yeah.
And my dad's SES within the U.S. Department of Transportation, doing stuff in data and analytics. So, and you grow up around the military and all that. So it was always something that I figured I might get into. But what I really love about it is, I mean, I come from a sports background. I played 4 different sports in high school, but played college soccer, played professional soccer, and I'm super competitive. And what I love about the government space is it's not for everybody. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And you're gonna take some gut punches sometimes, and you got to get back up and keep going. And that's the type of market, that's the type of job I've always wanted to work in. That's the type of job I'm in right now, and I love it. I can't think of a better way to spend my day, waking up, and it really gets me motivated to work with people and be successal. And it's just like I said earlier about my role, it's just a lot of fun. But I've loved working on the space.
Dre, how did you get into the government market? Like, what sucked you in?
By chance. I grew up in Florida. No.
Yeah, I came to Florida to get into the government. Yeah, in DC. Good.
I was going to say, so you've got your 2 kids, right? So that means one of them is going to be working for the government. The other one is going to probably be selling to the government.
Probably. Although Elias will tell you he wants to be a Navy SEAL right now.
Wow.
He also wants to be a Formula One driver. And I think a year ago he wanted to be a ninja. So you never know.
You never know.
Yeah.
We're all related.
Yeah. And my daughter McKinley, who turns 2 on Monday, she would probably say she wants to be Thomas the Train. So the professions are evolving in this house. I'll say that.
A ninja Navy SEAL. There's a totally tied together.
So my wife, I mentioned earlier, is a teacher. She's a STEAM teacher. STEM for those that aren't in more of the academic. They added A for art. But her formal background, she has an engineering degree from Virginia Tech. So she became an engineer, worked for the Army, and then went back to get her master's in education because she wanted to teach. And when I see Elias, I mean, there's a lot of her and him when it comes to the engineering side. Mm-hmm. I'm the kind of guy that I look at something and you know what, it works. Don't touch it. Leave it alone until it breaks, and then we'll figure out then. Yeah. He's the kind of kid that wants to take everything apart and figure out how it works and why it works. And it's cool seeing his brain work. So I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in some type of engineering field or at least a technology or STEM field at some point.
Yeah, amen. So
we got to follow up with you in about 18 years.
When we're on our 18,000 show. See,
and we are in the top what? We're in the top 1,000,000 now. We'll be top 1,000 viewers.
Top 1,000, right?
Top 1,000 LinkedIn.
Hey, and for our audience, listen, if you've never lived in the DC area, what Brian just said is true. When you get inside the Beltway, which highway runs around DC, it is, as somebody who's lived there, you get sucked in by what happens in the government, particularly the federal government and the elections and the budget and what have you. And then when you move away, you're like, why doesn't the rest of the world care about that?
I will tell you though, I was really good. I did not get sucked into the election. Being a global company, my boss lives up in Toronto, and I work with a lot of people up in Canada, especially. And I would get questions, especially after debates. I would get questions back from some of my coworkers saying, "So what do you think of this and that? And did you watch the debate?" And everybody up there was watching, like it was. I mean, primetime show. They had their popcorn ready. Everybody likes watching a train wreck, right? And I just no, I didn't watch it. I had something else to do. So I did not get sucked in. I was probably one of like 7 people in the DC area that didn't watch debates.
Yeah, that's it. You were definitely an anomaly.
Yeah.
So what would be your best advice? So a lot of our audience, I would say, is intrigued, sees the big numbers, would love to sell to the government, and they haven't, right? And so you've done a ton of things. You have a ton of resources available to them. We'll recap it again in a minute. But like, what would be your first advice for folks as they start to dip their toe in? They've philosophically committed, but like, hey, what are the first couple things? Where would you direct them? What would the best advice you'd give them? How do they start? You know?
Well, starting with what you said, don't dip your toe in. Make sure, like I said earlier, if you're in, go all in, because it's not a lottery ticket. You don't go up to your local gas station and buy a ticket and expect to get, and you can't just get into the government market and go win a $10 or $20 million contract. That's not how it works. Yeah. You need to establish yourself. I think proof that you've done business with the government successfully is obviously really important. That's one of the reasons why there's references within contracts. So you need to establish yourself and show value. The other thing I would say is doing business with the government, especially from a contracting standpoint, there's a lot of blocking and tackling involved, and it's not always easy to understand it. So if you have invested in that, I would invest in somebody who does understand that ecosystem, who understands. I mean, figuring out the different pieces of a process that you can influence is important, because if it goes to RFP, you need to know that it's probably past your point of influence. Yep. You need to get well ahead of that RFP. How can I figure out when a contract is expiring and start marketing to them a year and a half, 2 years in advance? That's part of what you want to do. So I think understanding that process is going to be key to success, and you need somebody who really does understand it to be your trusted advisor along the way. And then the last thing, don't be the type of company. It's not a transactional business. Don't sell and then move on to the next thing. It's about a relationship. And just like in business to business, people in the government want to do business with people that they like and people that they trust. And you need to be that trusted source for them beyond just selling, but somebody who understands their mission, their challenges, and will jump in that foxhole with them. I think that's important. And I will say this, and this is more of a tactical thing. If you're a salesperson listening, one of the biggest pet peeves that I have is salespeople that want to get through their entire sales deck. Don't be that guy or girl. Figure out how fast you can close your laptop and have a conversation. I talk about this on my podcast all the time. Close your laptop, be intelligent enough, know your portfolio enough to have a bi-directional conversation. That's how you show value. Don't show it on a slide. Don't show it in a talk track. Just talk to them. They're human beings, understand their challenges, and make it bi-directional. So important. Yeah, no PowerPoint. If you're never get away, be conversational, amazing. Hey, one quick side note, Dre, I'll turn it to you. You go to jacksani.com under resources. We actually will give you a list of support vendors that can help you. So it's so important. I agree with Brian. There are a million people that work for the government, been on that side, left, have consulting firms, services, help you get on GSA, you name it. And so you can go to, again, jacksani.com resources. We'll put the link in. And one of the giveaways we have there is we'll give you a list of vendors that'll help you be smart. You don't have to be, you don't have to jump in and so naive. Yeah. So there's a bunch of service providers and individuals that can help you get down the road without having to trip up too much. And you talk about resources. Take a look at folks like Imix Group, DLT, Carasoft, those type of distributors that can also provide you not only a contract that you can move. I mean, to those who do business here, you understand there's numerous contract vehicles. There's things like BPAs, IDIQs, all type of different vehicles to be able to sell your product more strategically. They have these contract vehicles they've invested in. So maybe partnering with groups like that too would be a way to kind of kick off the process for you. Amazing.
So you said in your last piece a lot of really great things that I totally agree with, right? We want to be proactive. We want to know when the contract's expiring. You could use the word proactive, which I love, because when I talk to people and they tell me I respond to bids, I'm like, oh, great. So you're reactive like the other millions of people responding to bids. Mm-hmm. But, and I kind of preach it all day long, but I would love for you to maybe tell our audience, why is it not your best practice to just respond to bids? Because I'll talk to companies who say, we have 100 bid sites, we're doing great. I'm like, what? So how else do you work with them? Like, we respond to bids. Any advice for that?
Yeah, we could do an entire show on that, right? For those that are doing this, I can tell you there's contractors sitting in offices, or maybe not sitting in offices, but they are working within these groups already, and they're already influencing the contract before it comes out. By the time it gets, and what Dre's talking about is by the time it gets to contract, they've basically already figured out who they're going with. To the extent that you look at RFPs sometimes and there's literally the name of the company written into it. And I'm sure there's vendors out there saying, how did that happen? How can I do that? How can my company's name, how can I put OpenText in that RFP?
Totally.
It's getting ahead of it. It's being proactive. The selling doesn't happen at the RFP stage. The selling happens when you're talking to the program manager, the person that's really driving this forward, and they're doing analysis on the technologies that they want to do. And at some point, they don't even know what they don't know, and they understand that, so they're just trying to figure out what's out there. If you're not reaching them at the very beginning of that process, then you're going to miss out 9 times out of 10.
Yeah,
definitely.
So true.
So they need GovSpend is what you're saying. So we can show them how to be proactive.
Absolutely. The other thing I will say too is, and this is more of a technical term on the third bid side. Don't be afraid of third bids either. Sometimes it's a way to get your foot in the door, and for the contracting officer or the person within that organization to know you're there and you're providing a value to them. So don't be afraid of third bids as well. I think it's an opportunity for you to be more strategic and start to evolve as a company. If you don't know what a third bid is, reach out to Jack and Dre. I'm sure they'll help you with that.
What's up with Jack's face?
Oh, you're on mute, Jack.
You're on mute, Jack. We've only been doing this for a year. You just clicked the little
Still on mute.
Leave and come back. I'm sure what you're going to say is super wise. We'll wait to hear it.
This is what happens when you do a show on Cinco de Mayo. Now, Jack, I agree with you now. I can't imagine what would have happened if we did a happy hour.
Although nobody says that there's a timing. I know you're not technically supposed to drink before afternoon, but now that it's 12:40 on the East Coast.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere. I'm a country music fan, so it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
I love country music. They're starting to have concerts again in South Florida, thank God, in the fall.
See what happens when you go away? I can pivot a show to country music anytime I want, Jack.
If you knew what was going on, there was bad sound coming. I can't. I'll tell you later. It's so funny. Brian. Oh God, it's a mess. Today's a mess. Brian, how do people reach you? How do they connect with you? What's the best way to reach out to you?
So I'm on Twitter at Chidester AB. You can find me on LinkedIn. Would love to connect with you there. And if my email address is bchidester@opentext.com if you want to reach out via email. But I'm happy to conversate with whoever wants to chat.
Yeah, there's a ton of things out there. So from OpenText, right, to his podcast, the Government Huddle, the G20 Global Smart City Alliance, if you're looking for information, Old School, the IHS Market, if you're looking for some analysis of a vertical, ton of resources out there to help you learn and be more efficient in the government space. So any last words, Brian? Any last things from your end?
No, this has been a lot of fun. Like I said, people feel free to reach out to me. We'd love to have a conversation.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Nice to meet you.
Have a great Cinco de Mayo.
Happy birthday to your daughter soon.
Yes,
thanks, Trey.
God bless. Oh God.
You want to tell us what happened?
I'll tell you in a second. I'll tell you in a minute. It's so funny. Oh God.
That's okay. He likes country music, and so here we were good.
I got it. I heard the whole thing going on. I'll in a minute. You'll so see. Yes. So listen, before we wrap, Brian, thanks so much for his time. He is involved in a lot of different things, and so encourage you to reach out. So he mentioned resources. He's one of them, right? He's been in the government space. The folks in the DC area, I'll just tell you, are just more tuned in. They see it, they live it. It's part of it's like talking to somebody that lived in New York City. You can't explain that to somebody because it just has a different vibe to it. Same thing in the DC area, just a really, really different vibe when you live in DC. And so before we break for Cinco de Mayo, Let It Fly, I want to remind folks of the webinar we're having on the 19th. And so if you were with us last month, we talked about, hey, how do you win deals? How do you win Gov deals in days? How do you win Gov deals in days? And so our next webinar on May 19th at noon is going to be, hey, how do you win all of the deals? Now that sounds like an overpromise, but we believe we have a model. Like it's one thing, Brian just said it. You don't want to dip your toe in and win one deal. That can actually be a pain in the butt and problematic. how do you win all the deals in an area? How do you win all the deals in a vertical?
Mhm.
And it sounds like that could never happen, but I'll just tell you, it does. There is a method and a way to walk through and be like, hey, how do you win all the deals in a particular region and a territory? Because I'll just say this, the government agencies all talk to each other. They do. And so we'll talk about, hey, how do you become the preferred vendor? How do you make it so like maybe you don't win all of them, but you win 90% of them because no one wants to be way out in the limb. They all want to use the thing that works all the time. So encourage you, May 19th, go register. The link's below. So that should be a great webinar. Trey, anything else you want to add? Because here's what was happening behind the scenes that no one could attribute. So this was happening.
We gotta have you pick up some maracas.
This was playing the entire time, and I couldn't turn it off. I'm like, what's going on?
Doesn't it make you just want to like walk around?
That's it. Get the shot out. Hey, happy Cinco de Mayo. Be safe out there. We will see you next week at noon.
Drink some tequila.
Woo!